Hello dear FutureDDS friends, my name is Dariel Liakhovetiski. I am a dental student, part of the class of 2025 at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Adams School of Dentistry, and I'm here today to share a little bit about my background as a student and path into dentistry. So to start off, I was born and raised in South Florida and ended up going to undergrad at the University of Florida. That's where I studied microbiology and cell science and met a lot of the people who really helped me get into dental school and cultivated my path towards pursuing dentistry. I got my Bachelor of Science degree there, and being involved in lots of clubs and organizations at the school having to do with pre-dental societies and pre-dental clubs and getting to work with current dental students at the school was a really valuable experience for me to see that this is the profession that I want to end up pursuing. And not only for getting exposure into the profession, but also in meeting mentors and people that guided me throughout the process. So my advice would be to any student looking to apply to dental school would be to get involved in their pre-dental clubs as much as possible, because not only do you really get to immerse yourself in the profession and determine that this is the profession you want to pursue and the path you want to take, but you also get to meet a lot of people who will be excellent mentors and help guide you throughout the process. One fun fact about me is I am a musician and I've been playing the cello since I was 4 years old. And that's one part of my life that I never wanted to give up and knew that music would always be a part of my life. I am a major music lover. And that's one thing students ask me quite a bit is when I'm pursuing graduate studies at med school or dental school, do I have to give up my extracurricular activities like sports or music or whatever it may be, whatever hobby it is? And the answer is absolutely not. On the contrary, when looking at your application, the schools love to see that you do something outside of your academic studies. And if you can show that you've achieved some level of success with your talent or hobby, then that's a major plus point to your application. So don't give up your hobbies. And when you're in dental school, you'll find that you need your hobbies more than ever because you need some time to relax and to take your mind away from studying all the time. So keep those hobbies up and don't give them up. What initially got me interested in dentistry was watching my dad work. So my dad practices in South Florida, and just watching the effect that he had on his patients and how much dental work means to people. I knew watching him work that that's the kind of impact I want to have on people one day. And I truly believe it's a special profession and you have the ability to touch people's lives in very deep and profound ways. So dentistry is a wonderful profession. It's just an amazing profession, and it allows you a lot of freedom to make your own choices with what kind of practice you want to run. You get to set your own rules and you get to touch people's lives in very meaningful ways. So I love the profession and I think it's a great path for anybody who's on the fence. If you don't know if it's the right path for you, my best advice would be to shadow some dentists, shadow all kinds of different specialists, and really get a sample of what the profession holds and if that's the right profession for you. So I would really recommend shadowing. For me, it was watching my dad work that made me decide that that's what I wanted to pursue. My approach to studying for the DAT was certainly an interesting one. I took my DAT right in the middle of COVID in May of 2021, and I only had about 2.5 weeks to actually prepare for my DAT because that was, as soon as I found an exam date, there was an availability, and I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna take it to make it for this cycle, and I took it, and luckily I did well enough so that worked out. But I don't know if that rush strategy would be something I would recommend to anybody. It was just a happening of the circumstance. But I would recommend to anybody studying for the DAT to get a good program. Now, I use DAT Bootcamp, which I think is the most amazing resource. And if anybody's wondering about which resource to use, I think DAT Bootcamp is the #1 program you would need to get. Other than that, I did get some of the Destroyer books, but I think DAT Bootcamp is the real one that helped me get through the course really quickly. But my main advice would be to create a schedule, be strict with yourself. It's a grind time, so no matter how you slice it, if it's 1 month you reserve for yourself, 3 months or 6 months, set a schedule for yourself where you have allocated time to really grind those hours out to study the material for the test, and you will do fine because the practice tests that are given in the software, in the materials, whether it's the Destroyer books or the DAT Bootcamp software, they're excellent practice tests and they really do a great job in preparing you well for the test. So I would just recommend being strict with yourself, creating a study schedule, and you'll do just fine. In terms of setting myself apart in my application from other applicants, I think the thing that really helped me was, aside from academics, was showing that I didn't give up on my hobbies. So music was the big thing for me. I've been playing the cello, as I mentioned, since I was 4 years old, and I really showed that that's a huge part of my life. So academically, that doesn't mean, if you have a hobby that you're doing well, it doesn't mean that academically you can slouch and be any worse than the other applicants, because dental schools are really competitive now, as med schools and everything has gotten really competitive. But I think the thing you need to have in your application to set yourself apart is some hobby that you're really good at. So whether that is academic and you're excelling at a certain subject, or if it's music, if it's sports, whatever it may be, I think having something like that in your application is a really good way to set yourself apart. And I know for me it was playing the cello, so I made sure to talk about how music impacts my life and how I think it ties into dentistry. And I think being a musician or playing a sport very much ties into the kind of clinician you'll be. So for me, music tied into the artistry aspect of dentistry, and I talked quite a bit about that in my application, about how seeing things like a musician helped me see things in a more artistic way, and how it taught me dedication, that things don't always work out from the first time. Like in playing music, oftentimes you'll start playing a piece and it doesn't work out the way you envisioned in your mind from the first time. So it just teaches you that you need to keep on practicing and practicing and practicing until you get it right. The same rules apply in dentistry, and they just want to see that you have a good, clear mindset for the kind of dentist you want to be, and that you won't give up in dental school as well. So having something that sets you apart, whether it's a sport, an instrument you play, whether it's academically you did something exceptional, I think that's a really valuable piece of advice that you should aim to have in your application to dental school. Talk a little bit about my actual interview day. So my interview at UNC was virtual, and I thought it went very smoothly. There were 3 interviewers total. 2 of them were faculty and 1 was a student, and they were very conversational. So some students who were applying the following cycle would ask me, what were the interviewers like? Do they really grill you, or what's the format of the interview? So at UNC, I felt like the interviews were very conversational and friendly. So again, the experience differs from student to student and based on which faculty member is interviewing you and which student is interviewing you. But my experience was that it was very friendly and they're just trying to get to know you. So my best advice to anybody who's preparing for an interview at UNC or really any school would be to prepare to have a friendly conversation and to just know your application really well. So when they ask you any detail from your application, being comfortable talking about it is really important. And just be prepared to have a friendly conversation. They're trying to see if you're a good fit for the school. So don't worry about trying to convey any particular type of message. It's more than anything, they're trying to see if your personality is a good fit with the university. So I would just say keep that in mind and know your application well. My best tips for the actual interview would be to take a deep breath, to relax. You've made it very far. They selected you. So on paper, you make the cut. That's one really important thing to keep in mind that one of the older dental students told me. Keep in mind, on paper, you already made the cut. So they're just trying to have a conversation with you. They're trying to see if you, as a person, are a good fit for the school. So don't stress about it too much. I know it's easier said than done, but take a deep breath. Focus on knowing your application, your material well, so that whatever they point to on your application, you can comfortably and confidently speak about it. But other than that, don't worry too much. Your stats are already approved. They're not judging your stats. They're just judging you as a person. So keep that in mind. I think that really helped me focus on having a good conversation as opposed to worrying about any aspect of my application that they may put questions specifically. Now, that's not to say that they won't bring up any specific aspects of your application, because they could ask you something specific about your application, ask you to describe what does this mean, tell me about your mindset, about what led you to doing this or pursuing this path. And being able to talk about that is very important. But don't worry about your grades making the cut or any particular stats making the cut. By getting the interview, you already made the cut. They're just evaluating you as a person if you fit the school. I picked the UNC Chapel Hill Adams School of Dentistry because I really felt like it was a special school, and I still firmly believe that it's, in my opinion, the most amazing dental school there is. One thing I would recommend every dental student do is to talk to students, to reach out via LinkedIn or online, however you can reach students, or Instagram is another great way to reach students. Reach out to students from all kinds of schools and talk to them about their experience at the school. So that's a really valuable way to connect to students and to gauge what their school is actually like day to day, and get a sense for what their experience is like in dental school, because dental schools are very similar overall, but they all have their own approach to doing things. So I would highly recommend reaching out to students and speaking to them. And in everybody that I spoke to, whether it was dentists or students or residents, everybody seemed to really love Chapel Hill and feel that it was a special environment with special people. So I visited and I totally agree. I think it's a special place. So to anybody considering UNC, I can't speak highly enough about it, and I would highly encourage you to reach out to myself or any of my classmates or upperclassmen or underclassmen. I would recommend reaching out and talking to them and seeing if it's a good fit for you. The transition for me going from being an undergrad student to a dental student was pretty smooth, and I think that's to credit the mentors I had along the way and the students that I spoke to, that I connected with during the application process. They really helped give me a good idea for what being a dental student entails, and getting to speak to them, I got a good sense for the workload that was about to start at being a dental student, and there was no shocking transition into being a dental student. So if anybody's wondering, it's quite a rigorous workload regardless of what dental school you go to. And if you speak to any dental student, they'll tell you that there's quite a bit of work. There is time though for a very healthy work-life balance, and I think you need to prioritize that. That's something I've had to learn, to set aside a schedule for studying and a schedule for enjoying yourself and for mental health. So that's been something that I've worked to create a good schedule where I can prioritize doing things I enjoy and studying outside of that. But there was no shocking transition. I think speaking to students really helped me get a clear picture for what dental school would be like. So that's a good piece of advice as well, that you have some dental students that are currently in the school you want to go to. I would talk to them about what the experience is like at that school, and they'll help paint a clear picture for what your day-to-day life will look like. A typical day of a first-year UNC dental student is pretty busy. So in the first 2 years, from what I've heard speaking to students, is when we really do the majority of our didactic courses, and it's quite rigorous exam-wise. So we do have quite a bit of clinical exposure early on, so they try to put us in the clinic really early at UNC, which I think is great. That was one of the things I was looking for in a school. I wanted to make sure that we get into the clinic really early and get to work with patients as soon as possible. However, what just about any dental student will tell you is that the first 2 years really, but the first year is really didactically heavy, and you will have quite a bit of coursework. So that's been my experience so far. There are quite a bit of courses, and I think going into dental school with the expectation that it'll be hard, it'll be challenging, it'll be quite a bit of courses and exams that you have to take, then I think it won't be too bad in comparison to what it actually ends up being. What makes me most excited about going to UNC Chapel Hill is just the environment. So you get to be surrounded by some incredible faculty, and all you have to do is knock on their doors and they're all there, whether it's you're interested in operative, restorative dentistry, periodontics, oral surgery, prosthodontics, orthodontics, whatever it may be. And I won't forget endodontics too, because they get left out sometimes. But whatever it may be, you have all these incredible people right there. They're just a knock on the door away. And I just think it's the most incredible environment, and truly a gift to be able to study in a school that has so many amazing people right at your fingertips. That's what I would say makes me most excited about going to UNC Dental. It's the opportunities to grow both as an individual and as an eventual clinician. It's a really exciting place to be young and to learn and to grow. So I couldn't imagine a better place to go to dental school than UNC. So go Heels. My biggest piece of advice to pre-dents would be to do your research on a school that fits you best, because there's a lot of great schools out there but you really want to make sure that you find an environment that really fits you. And you want to take everything into account. You want to take into account the city, the faculty that teaches there, the student body, and the class culture, I think are the top most important things to really consider, and also cost, of course. So you really want to think about all of those important aspects about a dental school, and think about what environment you want to be, because it'll impact how you learn, who you connect with, and also the kind of clinician you'll end up becoming because of the opportunities that are available at the school. So that was very important for me when picking a school, and I think it's really important to do your research. And I think the best way to do your research nowadays would be to just look at social media or online, search for students who are students at all kinds of dental schools, and to just reach out and talk to them about their experience at the school. I think that by talking to students directly, you can get a pretty clear picture for what the class culture is like at their school. So that would be my number one piece of advice. Do your research about the school you want to end up at, because that'll affect the opportunities, what's available to you, and the kind of clinician you'll end up becoming. So do your research. Thank you, friends, for taking the time to join me today and to hear a little bit about my story and about how you too can apply to dental school and pursue this great profession. If you have any questions that come to mind, please feel free to leave a comment below or to contact me directly. My email is dliakhovetiski@unc.edu. That's my school email. Feel free to reach out to me on social media. I am Dariel Cello on Instagram. It'll probably be linked somewhere in the video here. I look forward to hearing from you and hope this has been a little bit helpful and insightful, hearing about my journey, and hopefully you can apply it to your journey in some way. Again, thank you very much for joining me. I wish you the very best of luck with your application process, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.